Hello and welcome back to the Shoe Dares Wins podcast. My guest this week is Siobhan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you.
Oh, good. Well, I listened to your story. I think it was the podcast with Kay on a journey.
Kay Adams.
Yes.
Yes.
On a journey down to Cornwall. And I said to my husband, I need to have this lady on the podcast. And here you are. So that's the best manifestation there. But we'll start off with the first question. So can you tell me how you've dared and won?
How I've dared and won. I dared to retire at 60, get rid of my home and all my possessions, and go off in search of my happy place in my motorhome. And 6 years later, after being broken in my mid-50s and 60, I am now genuinely the happiest that I've ever been in my life. So I dared to take that risk to hit the road, to say I want to find out who I am, what do I really want, and what do I really want to do with my life. And I'm so lucky I'm doing it.
It fascinates me because we were just chatting about common friends of ours and how there are so many women out there, post 40 that are just finding themselves and then this fabulous thing happens. But before we get to that point, take me through your early career.
Well, I was born and bred in Leeds,
Yes.
and I went to Notre Dame Grammar School in Leeds, and I became a nurse at St James's, and I nursed for 9 years. Then I left nursing and I got pregnant with my daughter, Sammy, and I taught myself to type and did my typing exams whilst I was pregnant. And I got myself a little job at BBC Radio Leeds, working in reception. And I wasn't particularly good, if I'm totally honest, at answering the phone. And then I heard the advertisement come up for the BBC trainee reporter scheme, the local radio one. And I applied for it, and 7,500 people applied for 26 places, and I got one of those places.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, I was so lucky. And because I'd always had a really strong interest in news.
Okay.
And it was something that I think honestly, I would have pursued, but my mum had been a nurse, my dad had been a nurse, 2 sisters had been nurses. So I just kind of went into that nursing thing.
Okay.
But actually, I'd always liked news. So then I trained to be a journalist, and I worked for over 30 years, 10 years in local radio, and 20 years in television down at South East Today in Tunbridge Wells.
Wow. Now that, to me, seems like daring a two. Like, putting yourself in a position of working on the telephone and then just put yourself forward. So there's been that in you since the start, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose there has. I never thought of it as daring at the time. It was just something that I knew I wanted to do. Here was an opportunity. And the relationship that I was in, that my daughter's father and I, was very unstable. I could see the writing on the wall that I was going to end up being a single mother, which I subsequently did do when my daughter was 4. So it was, I seized the opportunity more than anything. I wasn't thinking I was being daring. It was almost like now or never.
Right.
And so I took the opportunity, and it was the best thing that I ever did.
And what happened to you? So you had this amazing career, and what happened in your 50s that created this whirlwind of change?
What happened in my 50s? I think my brother died at 53 from lung cancer, and that kind of really shook me. And then I had precancerous cells, and I had to have a hysterectomy. I call it my hystericlectomy because I've never been the same since I had it. But I nosedived then into a surgical menopause, and hadn't got a clue really what was going on, and really struggled in the workplace. And at that time as well, I was feeling ageism was coming into play, and I was feeling marginalised and voiceless. And then a couple of years later, my sister, who was 53, died of lung cancer as well.
Wow.
I know. And that absolutely floored me. I completely lost myself. I went I just wasn't coping at all. With the menopause at work, I'd sit there next to people I'd known for years and worked with for years and look at them and think, what's your name? What's your name? I can't, I had my cotton wool head. I was stressed. Wasn't sleeping. I was feeling bullied at work. So also I wasn't sleeping, thinking I want to have conversations with my boss tomorrow about how I feel I'm being treated. And then I'd go in and have those conversations and just start crying because I felt anxious with the menopause. So all sorts of things were coming into play. And I just kept trying to fix myself and think, come on, Siobhan, you're a strong woman, you can do this. And so I did things. My daughter got me to run a marathon when I was 53 after my sister died, saying, come on, Mum, let's. You've always said to me, out of adversity comes opportunity. Let's raise some money for cancer charities in memory of Jonathan and Helen. And I went kicking and screaming out training. But we did it, and we did the Brighton Marathon, and I did it in 5 hours, 2 minutes.
Epic.
And that gave me a buzz. When I across the finish line, I thought, come on, Siobhan, the only thing stopping you in life is yourself. You weren't a runner, and you've done it. You've achieved it. You've run a marathon. You've crossed the finish line. You are strong. You can cope with things. But then I'd go back into work, and I'd lose myself again. And I was going to retire at the peak of my marathon career, but my daughter had other ideas and entered me for the London Marathon. So when I was 55, I ended up running the London Marathon and did that in 5 hours, 9 minutes. Again, raised about £5,000 for charity. And then I climbed the 3 Yorkshire Peaks when I was about 57 in a day with friends. So I was going for these, really challenging things to do to give me that buzz to say you are okay and I can be happy, but then I go into a dark place. So that all kind of broke me, really. And then I went to Malawi with a group of women to sort of meet women out there that were doing their cooperative things and setting up banks and helping each other. And we climbed Mount Mulanje, the highest mountain. I was 59 then, the highest mountain in Malawi. And that was my first experience of women kind of supporting women and being together. And even the group I went out with, not all of us were necessarily fit, but we stuck together and made sure we got to that top of the mountain together, and supported one another. And I loved that. But all the time these kind of things were going on, I was just getting more and more broken, and I was going into a very, very dark place. And I don't say it lightly, but if my daughter hadn't been here, I'm not so sure I'd have been here.
Wow.
But I was very lucky. I had a great GP, a young woman who put me on antidepressants and said to me, trust me, really trust me. We can get you through this period of time. And then at the same time, in my head, I was thinking, I need to get out of this. And one particular day at work, I went into the toilets crying, because that was always my place. I went, my safe place. And I ended up crying in the toilet and just looking at myself and thinking, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm absolutely broken. And I went home that night and I said to my daughter, I want to stop pretending. I want to know who I am and what I want to do. But I didn't know what to do. And I literally woke up one morning and thought, motorhome. And I still, to this day, have no idea whether I'd never holidayed in one, never driven one. And I'd slept in one once in New Zealand with a couple that I'd met, know, but I'd never holidayed, never driven one. But it just popped in my head. And it just seemed, that's it. That's the answer. Get rid of all the clutter. I'm working long hours to earn lots of money to pay for things. My nickname was Champagne Siobhan, living the high life. And yet all of it was just a nonsense because I was broken. So that's what I did. I went into work the next day when that idea came in my head and just went, I'm going to retire at 60, get rid of everything, buy a motorhome and hit the road and find my happy place. And everyone was sort of rolling their eyes going, oh, here we go again. This is Siobhan being Siobhan. But when I was approaching 60, they all went, oh, my goodness, you're really doing this, aren't you? And I did in 2019. I'd got rid of my home, my possessions. I gave things away. People would come for dinner, and I'd literally say, do you like that lamp? Have the lamp. Take that. Take things to charity shops.
Wow.
My daughter and I used to walk past charity shops in Tunbridge Wells, and she'd go, is that yours, Mum? And there were things in the window. And then I turned the key in the ignition 2019 and hit the road in search of my happy place.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I did, but not before going through some real highs and lows. First of all, I had to get to grips with the logistics of just being in the motorhome.
Sure.
And I wasn't very good at that to begin with. I was kept pulling over, crying a lot and thinking, oh, what have I done? I don't know. And my brother, who already had a motorhome, I used to phone him up going, I don't know what to do. And he'd answer the phone going, motorhome helpline. So he would give me advice, things like when I was driving and there were loads of cars behind and I was getting stressed, he would say, just drive till you find somewhere to pull over, calm down, let all the traffic go by, and then go again at your own pace. Don't feel intimidated.
Yeah.
So I kind of got more confidence driving. And then filling the tank with water, a basic thing that you do every day now, and I don't think about it. But when I first, I didn't even know how to put the ends of the different connections to the hose pipe on different types of taps that you can get on sites. So I cheated and got someone to fill the tank for me before I set off. And then I had a pink Love Heart bucket and a watering can. And I literally used to walk backwards and forwards from the tap to top it. And people would move their chairs and look at me as if to say, what on earth is she doing? I remember one particular time on a farm in Harrogate, I write about it in my book. I've written a book called Retirement Rebel, and I write about it in my book. This couple just watching and laughing because I was going back, and they ended up giving me loads of tips and information about life in a motorhome. After that, we got talking, but they just thought it was hilarious, me going back over the farm field with this pink Love Heart bucket.
I love this, but just to step back a bit to when you were working and you had this kind of like, I guess, life outside of work, which was amazing. You were doing all these adventures, and then in work was just this real dark place. Like, I can't imagine what that is like, you know, to go to work every, I mean, I say that, I've cried in many a construction toilet, but to feel so lost, and there's no, you're surrounded by women, I guess, in media and production, but yet no one really supportive there to kind of say.
There were the odd people who were supportive, but some of the perpetrators were women who were the worst kind of women, in my opinion.
Wow. So the ones that have I've kind of had this in the past as well, have maybe climbed the ladder, and now it's like, well, it's a rite of passage kind of attitude.
Almost. But I mean, I don't want to go into specifics.
No,
No, only because I don't want to get into trouble legally. You know, I highlight who it could be. But no, some of the women who their behaviour towards me was totally unacceptable. Now I've found my voice and my inner warrior.
Yeah.
I have no qualms at all about, I would confront them and have a conversation. I'd come from a kind place, because one of the things I did after getting to grips with the logistics of the motorhome, the driving and everything, I went to the edge of a lock in Scotland, Loch Morlich, and I stood on the edge of that lock in the middle of the night, and I screamed and I shouted, and I had all my conversations with people that I would have had conversations with at work, and my father, because I had a particularly difficult childhood, and various things. I just got off my chest, and then I just fell on my knees and was really calm, and just kind of thought, that's it now.
It's done.
Leave that behind you. Use it as fire in your belly to move forward, and make sure no other woman feels like that, and confront it if you see it or you hear it. And that's what I've done ever since I go out, call myself a pro-age campaigner, and I'm shouting from the rooftops that too many women in the workplace, when they hit 55 plus, maybe a bit earlier, are marginalised. They're made to feel voiceless. They're made to feel worthless, not good enough. They're denied career opportunities and training. And that historically was never okay, but it was more acceptable because they could leave at 60, get the pension, and just forget about it. Now you can't get your pension till you're nearly 70. So that's a long time for women to be in a toxic environment. So we need to address it, and we need to change things.
And do you think that women, like, the more, because you're speaking now to you're helping women, and you're speaking to women that have been in a similar situation, do you think there's a huge generation that just suffered for years?
And are suffering now. When I go and give talks, and they're lining up for me to sign my book, they are literally crying and saying, I'm there, I'm now, that's what it's like in my work, but I can't leave. Because a lot of women, if they've broken like me, I was lucky I had a works pension, but I couldn't have carried on much longer, and they're forced into poverty. And years ago, when women were pregnant, and they used to tell the bosses they could be sacked, and they would find that themselves in financial difficulties with a small baby. And they all got together and legislation was brought in and it was changed, and you couldn't do that. Women's ability to do their jobs through the menopause is often questioned. Now there's training and policies and hopefully legislation to address that. And the next elephant in the room is ageism and bullying. And it needs addressing. We need proper firm I know there are some types of legislation, but the people are circumventing them. We need proper solid legislation to say that women, they've got another 15, 20 years in the workforce before they can get the pension.
Yeah.
So that, you know, you can't carry on behaving the way you are.
Yeah.
But young women are afraid to call it out because they're frightened of their career progression. Older women are frightened to call it out because they're frightened of losing their job and they won't get another job. So there's this elephant in the room that people aren't addressing. And I'm trying to say, I am saying, and I am shouting, saying we need to get the conversation going and we need to change things.
Yeah, there is definitely. So like I'm 40 now, and only I'd say in the last year, and by speaking to other women, I am seeing this more and more. And it's as someone in their like late 30s, early 40s, I don't even think about this. I was just like, no. In fact, the older women have more expertise, more knowledge. Yes, I know that menopause can bring lots of difficulties, but I think there's a generation of 40 below that aren't aware of what the shit's going to hit the fan soon.
That's exactly it. And that's what I say. I say to people, and I use my hand like sort of like a lift going up, an escalator going up, saying, you think you're going up here. But what do you think it's going to be like? When you get here, it's a shit show.
Yeah.
There's bullying, there's ageism. For some people, it's great.
Right.
But not enough, and it's not the norm. And it's not talked about. And so that's why people can get away with it. Or people say, oh, we've got policies in place for older women, but it's all tokenism. It's like, here's a budget, go and have a lunch, and women all talk about it.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to, so they've addressed it, they've box ticked.
Yeah.
But they don't actually address issues. Somebody said to me, I was on a panel with some people, and they said to me, that women in their mid-60s are living their happiest lives, they're repurposing, that there isn't a problem. And I said, we need to go back a little bit and see, why have they had to repivot? Why have they had to repurpose their lives? What were they feeling like as they approached that situation? Because I was forced to repivot and to repurpose my life.
You don't want people to get to below, like where you were, the lowest of the low, because there will be a lot of people that will go low and won't be able to come out of that. And so, yeah, you're right. Like by you sharing your story, it's allowing people to go, well, this could happen to you. How do you stop it? How do we stop awareness? So I briefly said before the show started about kind of preaching to the converted and there are events set up there. You can go into companies and advise. But what would you say to because I think that's hard, isn't it? That's changing this like archaic thing that will probably take years to do. Hopefully not, but possibly will. What do you say to those women that come up to you that are, tearful and they resonate with your story? Do you have any, and I know it's not singular and it's very complex, but do you have any kind of advice for them now?
Yeah. I say, tell people, talk about it. Don't be embarrassed, because I pretended for too long. I didn't talk about it. I used to put my game face on, my makeup on, and I would cry going into work. I would cry in the toilets at work. I would cry coming home because you're embarrassed. You've got a career. You looks good on the surface working for the BBC, lovely flat, lovely daughter. Everything looks great. And you don't want your children to think that you're not doing well either, or your partner. It's just embarrassing. And I say, talk. And that's why I'm organising events where young people and old people get together, and the young people have got 3 questions they can ask the old people, and the old people have got 3 questions they can ask the younger people. So it's get the conversation going. We can talk about it. We can learn from each other. I don't know the solutions. All I know is do not be afraid to ask for help and to talk about it. And just because your company says it's got a policy, I'm afraid
bullshit,
a lot of them, you can't rely on it.
Yeah.
Because if you start bringing that policy into play, often you're blackballed
Yeah.
and you're treated like the trouble causer.
Yeah.
I felt that myself, that I was treated like the one that was causing the problem, and nobody was listening, and they were rolling their eyes, and then I was denied opportunities, and then I'd become frustrated, and then maybe my tone and the way I spoke and the way I behaved then, I wasn't my best advocate because I was frustrated, I was angry, and I did feel totally lost and broken. And I know that that's what happens to women, so they daren't speak up.
And I think it's important, isn't it, to, again, it goes back to this community, that you found your community as well, slowly, outside of work. And I think this is quite important. We get into this mindset of, well, not mindset, pattern, don't we, of a busy family life and friends, and those friends stay the same, and you might have a relationship where you don't feel comfortable talking to your friends. And what I've seen from guests on the show is that when you expand or go looking for new friendship groups, it really can have a massive impact on your life, because those new people might slightly more align with, we're all going through different things at different times. Some people might have perimenopause and others have not even touched on it yet and therefore can't relate. And I think we perhaps get too stuck in a rut, you know, socially with our friendship group, and it's really important to break out of that.
I think for me, when I was in my motorhome in lockdown, I got stuck in fields for 9 months.
I was going to say, so you literally, just to add to the shit show of like, quit motorhome,
shouting for the rooftops, I'm going to go with the flow. My plan is to have no plan and be
Lockdown.
free. And then lockdown a few months later. You couldn't make it up.
But I think that's quite nice in that you can tell me whether,
Okay, you sit in a field for 5.5 months and see what you think.
Well, I feel like it forced you to maybe sit for a second.
Yes.
Before, because you've gone from something massive to this next adventure, and it feels like, I'm not someone that's very spiritual, but it feels like the universe kind of said, whoa, sit there for a minute, Siobhan, sit with the darkness before you move to the light. So tell me about that. Were there dark times?
Oh God, I cried lots and lots of tears,
Okay.
And I remember phoning my cousin up going, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sitting in this tin box in a field. What the heck am I doing? And particularly after the second lockdown, and my pipes had frozen, and I'd had to go out and melt snow to make cups of tea and have strip washes and all that. And I used to be on BBC Radio Kent every 2 months with them going, you know, what are you doing now, Siobhan? And I remember being interviewed on there and saying, do you know what, I think I'm going to give up. I can't do it anymore. And it was just after the Christmas where Tony... Prime Minister had said, said Tony Blair there, it wasn't. The Prime Minister said we couldn't go and see family over Christmas because of COVID. And so I couldn't see my daughter, and I just felt really in a dark place. And then I woke up the next day and I thought, do you know what? You've met this tribe of women now. I've been on social media, that's what I was going to say, during lockdown. I met loads of people, and one in particular, Jo Mosley, her story resonated with me because she was sort of crying in the supermarket, broken, and children, and a single mother, and then did this awesome thing where she paddleboarded the Leeds Liverpool Canal and stuff. So I contacted her and said, Jo, can you do me a favour? Can I interview you on just live on Instagram from my motorhome? And that's what I did. So I started doing loads of live interviews on Instagram with awesome women who was sort of my tribe I was gathering. And it gave me the confidence again that what I was doing was okay and I would find myself. And then Rachel Peru, another awesome woman who helps women with body confidence and aging positively, she contacted me and asked me to go on her podcast. And I thought, oh my God, somebody wants me to talk about what I'm doing. And that was the first podcast I was on. And so all these little things, like you say, finding your tribe and having time to stop and reflect, what do I want? What direction do I want to go in? All helped me an awful lot.
Yeah, I think it fascinates me when I speak to women who don't feel supported by other women. And that happens. That is life. You're going to have many different personalities. But post-COVID then, so you eventually get on the road.
Yeah.
And what fascinates me is there's very much, I think during COVID, this van life, like YouTube, I got into it, you know, people were buying vans. But I'm going to say predominantly younger people where the responsibilities are not there. You know, they've perhaps got a job where they can work remotely. You know, they put themselves in situations where I don't want to be ageist here, but they put themselves in situations where they think, fuck it, kind of the mentality you have in your 20s, but you
have it any age. That's that. I
right.
love that you're saying that, because that's exactly what I'm sort of trying to make people aware of. There's a lot of women now in their 60s going, fuck it.
Yeah.
And they're getting rid of their homes or renting their homes out and hitting the road in the vans. I mean, I've just been to Yestival, which is an amazing festival, and a lot of older people mixing with younger people. But there were 3 women there who'd gone just because they'd seen that I was talking there and they'd read my book, and they knew one of them said, I looked at all the pictures to make sure I wouldn't be the oldest one there.
God bless.
And she was reassured because she could see all ages. And I think more and more, there are a lot of older women. The Caravan and Motorhome Club have taken me on as an ambassador because they can see that there's a lot more women in their 60s who are going out there and buying vans and living this nomadic life. If not full-time, they're definitely having their adventures in the van. So it's not just the youngsters doing it, we're all doing it.
We're all on it. It's making me passionate now to get into, well, I think that's the thing, isn't it, is that there's this perhaps time scale where it's lost a little bit. And I'm quite intrigued into why that is. I think it's possibly family life.
Yeah, it is. You put your life on hold almost. Not because you don't want to, but the logistics of sort of being, like for me, working full time, being a single mum, you know, I travelled in India and done all sorts of things, been to Ladakh and Nepal in the early 80s on the highest road in the world and done those kind of adventures. And then I had my daughter Sammy, and I kind of stopped doing those level of adventures. So it was once she'd done uni and was, you know, moved out and I was free to look at what I really wanted, then I wanted that adventure back again. I just wanted the happiness.
Yeah.
And the adventure gives me the happiness. And so that's what I've pursued. And I've become sort of almost like to be part of a family of women who are doing that, and they reach out to me, and I'm blessed that, I mean, my book, I've sold 12,600 copies of my book so far.
Is that self-published or?
No, I published it with Vertebrate Publishing.
Okay,
because I was lucky. The Guardian newspaper, a journalist saw my Instagram and what I was doing and liked what I was doing and contacted me and said, could we write a column about you in our Changing Your Life After You're 60 column that they've got. And when they wrote that, I'd sent a proposal to Vertebrate about a book, and then the journalist sent me an email a few weeks later saying 900,000 people had read my article online worldwide. And so I forwarded that to Vertebrate, and then they came back and said, yeah, we're interested. And they took a leap of faith in me, really, and trusted me and published my book for me. And I got a literary agent at the same time who contacted me and said she'd like to be my literary agent. And so everything happened. It was so exciting.
But it just proves, doesn't it, there's not enough women out there speaking about it, because the ones that do are getting such good traction and doing it honestly.
There are more now in the last few years, and now Jo Mosley's hit 60 as well. She's in the gang of, you know, 60 plus, and she's incredible, promoting sort of all the little tips of how to stay healthy and live through your 60s. I wished I'd had a Jo before me, because I'd have been healthier. But I might do that when I hit 70.
That's very true. I would like to ask you about your daughter. So, Sammy, how old is she?
She's 36, nearly 37. She's like a Safi from Ab Fab, and she thinks I'm Eddie. She's always, what are you doing, Mum, now? Where are you?
I love that.
She's put an app on my phone and her phone so she can tell where I am.
Oh, she can find you. I love that. It's normally the way around. I love that. How do you think you live in your life the way that you have in the last, like, since 50s has affected her? And is there anything, have you ever said anything to her, or are you kind of showing her what's coming and what can be had? I'm interested in that. Or are you different personalities?
No. She's very independent. I always say, I brought you up on my own and I was a single mother. And she goes, I'll give you till I was 9. But no, I think it was a hard time for Sammy when I was I know it was a hard time for her when I was in my 50s, and she saw me struggling and feeling bullied and marginalised at work and lying for hours in bed and crying. And she saw the dark side of it at home, which I hid from a lot of people. A lot of my friends have said, since they've read my book, they've said, why on earth didn't you tell us And I just couldn't bring myself to. But Sammy, unfortunately, got the impact of me struggling with life.
Kids do, don't they?
And I regret that. I really do. And also, I've written a chapter about her and my relationship in the book because I realised I was striving to be successful at the BBC and get promoted and earn lots of money to make and live in the right places to make sure she went to good schools, not realising necessarily the negative impact it might have on her, that she was always the new girl because I'd move, and get promoted.
Okay.
And she was always the new girl, and then there wasn't family around when we went down to Tunbridge. So she was literally on her own going into this grammar school a year later than all the other girls, And so... And I think she's been cross with me about things to do with that. And I've been very defensive and not taken accountability for some of those things. But putting pen to paper and writing the book and writing that chapter was very cathartic for me. And I did go back to her and say, I want to have these conversations with you. And we have discussed that I realise where I've gone wrong. But I also sort of say, nobody's taught me to be a mum. I'm muddling through as well. And I may have got some things wrong. But saying that, because I've been a single mum and I've lived the way that I've lived, she's a great, strong, independent, awesome woman. So she's got benefits from it as well. And I know she was petrified when I headed off in the motorhome. She supported me, but a couple of years later, after my book had come out and it was selling and things, she did sit me down and sort of say, I was worried, but I'm so, so proud of you, of what you're doing. And I know whenever she goes places, she'll message me going, oh, their mum's going to get your book, or I've told them all about you, or they're following you now on Instagram. I'm on Instagram under Siobhan Shove Off because I kept my Yorkshire bit shove off.
I love that. I think that's epic. So you're not 19. So you're 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years.
6 years on the road.
I can't believe it myself, and I'm just getting happier and happier.
So there's no selling that camper van to you are.
Well, my brothers and sisters every now and then, there's sort of like, so when are you going to buy again? And what are you going to do? And I say, I don't really know. And the thought of being in one place, I think, oh no, I like my nomadic life. And I house sit for 3 months of the year as well.
Right.
Which is great. I go to Brighton and Folkestone and Reading, all over the place to look after pets and houses. So I get a mixture of being in a nice, lovely, big, posh house and then going back to Dora the Explorer. But I've had enough of the house by the time I've done 2 weeks house sitting. I want to get back. I want to move on. I want to go exploring. So I don't know where I'm going to go from here. I have got a big adventure planned.
Oh, so that was going to be one of my questions. Yeah, I don't know if you could share, but you've done so much in the last 6 years, and now you're on this trajectory of like, you're gathering you've got a community. There's a sense of responsibility with that.
I've got over 50,000 followers across my social media.
Nice, yeah.
And 25,000 of those are on TikTok. And people keep saying, oh, older women don't use TikTok. People over 60 don't use TikTok. People keep telling us what we don't do.
I know, yeah,
and we do it.
Yeah.
We are out there.
Yeah.
Everything's sort of 50 plus, 55 plus, or middle-aged or menopausal. Yeah. And then it's like we've disappeared off the edge of a cliff like a load of lemmings.
And if somebody is saying that, well, let's change it.
Yep, which is why I started my podcast, Retirement Rebel Life After 60, because I wanted a platform to say, we are out there, we are doing it. We're not celebs, we are doing things, extraordinary things and ordinary things, mega adventures and micro adventures.
Yeah.
But, and I want these women to talk about it so that we inspire women of your age to say, don't be afraid to get old, because it just gets better.
I'm excited. A lot of the episodes that I do in the show with women 40 plus get a hell of a lot of traction because it's like we say, people want to hear these stories and that's going to spark someone to join a club or go and find some other women that are like them. And why the hell not? Like, let's not forget. For me, it fascinates me that older women have so much more life experience. We need to be learning from this, not going, you don't know what you're on about. Yeah, you got way hardier.
But I've just been this weekend at Yestival at the Big Sky Hideaway in Lincolnshire, and it is just the most amazing place. And like I say, the ages are from people in their 20s right the way through to people in their 70s and 80s. And we sit and we eat the meals together and we talk together and we encourage each other with the adventures. And the young girls are coming up and hugging me and, you know, you're such an inspiration.
Yeah.
And I say to them, you're an inspiration to me that you're so vibrant at such a young age and exploring life and living life to the full and getting out there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we need to see more of, just supporting people.
I think there's going to be a slight switch in the next generation. Is I think they're sick of the bullshit that we've gone through, and they're starting to speak up. And you've kind of got to be like, all right, we're seeing this change now, and this is good. So what's the next big adventure?
Well, in March and April next year, I'm going to be driving a motorhome from Vancouver all the way up to Alaska.
Oh, sweet.
I mean, I'm planning it now.
Yeah.
I've got to obviously fine tune it in the next 6-7 months. But that's the plan, is to fly over to Vancouver, pick up a motorhome and drive up to Alaska, and to talk to women in Canada and America about what it is to age there and how they're treated and what they think. And all being well, I'll have book number 2, because it's the anniversary of Route 66 next year, and I'll be 66, so this is my Route 66.
Okay.
So all being well, I'll have a book of the journey itself with awesome pictures and things, but also interspersed, I'll be talking about what I've learnt.
Yeah.
Being in a motorhome since I was 60, what I want women to do, both young and old, and just tips about being positive when you're aging and living life the best way you can, because we've all only got one shot at this living lark, you know.
Yeah.
So we owe it to ourselves to do it the best way.
Have you ever read Into the Wild?
No.
Because throughout our whole talk here, I've been like, this sounds so much like... So it's a young lad, and his name was Alex Supertramp. And he, a little bit different to your story, but he was young, about to go to college in America. And
I'll have to read it.
He could just see this trajectory of like college, career. And something just drove him to... He spent all his college fund from his parents, and he disappeared.
Well, I bet they were pleased about that.
Yeah, he disappeared off the face of the earth in terms of them, like got rid of his driving license, social security, whatever. And he did a trip up to Alaska and then spent time in the wilderness in Alaska. Unfortunately, he died.
I'm not planning to do that.
No, because he ate the wrong berry. But they made it into a film, and it's all about, and this is where I think your story is probably going to align with this so much. His story is, as well as about finding himself, it's the people he meets on this journey of all walks of life. Yeah. And I think travel anyway gives you that, whether you travel in, you know, even if you go on holiday, not as much, but you go on these adventures, it's something you've experienced. I you know, undoubtedly know in the van you'd have met people.
People who I probably wouldn't have, I'm ashamed to say, stopped and talked to.
No,
when I
in
was
social
working.
circles when you're working
How are you?
Yeah.
Not really caring how they were and just heading off.
Yeah. Yeah.
A bit like the outdoors now. Before, I'd meet my friends, we'd go to the Lake District, we'd go for walks, but quite honestly, it was the social interaction and waiting to get to the pub to have a good laugh.
Yeah.
But I wasn't taking in my surroundings, I wasn't enjoying nature. Now, I can smell the different air, the different seasons, the grass, the rain on the leaves. I listen to the birds. I get up in the morning and walk barefoot on the grass and do my grounding. And just, I'm really feeling, I lie down on the ground and watch the clouds and the little shapes they made. And I get the same peace and joy that I used to get as a child. But for 40 odd years, I stopped doing that. And it's crazy.
Yeah. You have to strip away the madness of everyday life.
So I stop and talk to people and listen to people now and hear their stories, and I'm learning, and I like that. I'm becoming a better listener.
Yeah, it's hard. It's so weird, isn't it, that we can go through life and not lose. It sounds the wrong word, but you know, a good 20 years, and then wake up one day and go, shit. Like, what am I chasing? Like the money, Yeah, I mean, got a little bit into that in construction, you know, living the high life, earning a good salary, next project to project, and I was just like, oh, this is starting to feel yucky. Yeah. And mine was like a health scare that made me kind of just jack it all in, but we shouldn't be getting to that point, which I think is important for the next generation.
I think we need to really look at what we're teaching our children as well. In school, we need to look at children are treated that they're naughty children if they don't sit in rows and concentrate and focus, and they're bad children and naughty children, and actually they just want to be outdoors and at one with nature and using their hands, and a different way of educating. And I think we should teach them yoga in school, we should teach them meditation, we should teach them kindness and happiness. The measure for me of success, when my brother said to me, he said to his grandson, when anybody asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Happy.
Yeah, so true.
And that should be it,
Yeah.
you know, happy. So do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
It might be becoming a doctor, a nurse, or something, but really happy. And that's what a lot of us lose sight of.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? Yeah. Well, your story is, let me see. Yeah, your story is fascinating, and I like your passion just shines through.
Thank you.
And the people that you attract do too, and the adventures that are to come. I feel like I know you've been in 6 years, but I feel like it's really only just starting. You know, you're probably getting the effects now of just, you know, sharing that story, and then what that's going to bring to you and how you can impact so many other women's lives. Before we wrap up, this is normally a question that I say for like the bonus episode, which is 5 minutes after, but what would you like to say if there was a bunch of women in here now, let's go 40 plus, not quite at the position that you were at of breaking point, but just looking at you going, I know this, I'm feeling a bit of this. Like, is there anything that you say to people now when you meet them that you could share with us?
If you get the chance, get a piece of paper or a book or something, write in it, sit down and write in it exactly what you would really like to do with your life if all bets were off. And write that down. And then when you've done that, and really think about it, everything, all the minutiae of things that you really would like to do. It's not a wish list. It's just a feeling, a truth, your real you, your authentic you. What would you want to do? Then write down what is it that's stopping you from doing that. And everything, all the details could be finance, dependence, fear of what people might think, all that. And then write down afterwards what you think you need to do to overcome that. And then just put that away somewhere, in a drawer, whatever, and forget about it. And then maybe revisit in a year's time. But it's amazing. I think that's why the idea of the motorhome popped in my head, because I'd been mentally doing that kind of thing. And my brain, you know, when you see somebody in the street you haven't seen for years, and then 2 weeks later they're in your dream.
Yeah.
So there's things going on in our brains and things that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And I think that's why motorhome just popped ridiculously. And I think by doing an exercise like that, you will somehow, the answers and solutions to things that are making you feel unhappy will come through in your life.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're an absolute star, and keep doing what you do. You're amazing.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I've absolutely loved chatting with you.